back to my channel. Today we are moving on to the rest of the fur on this guy's face. We're going to start working our way down his head. We'll see if we get to the nose today. We'll just see how much of his face we get done. I hope you're enjoying this tutorial so far. We're not that far off from finishing once we've got his face done on once we've got the fur on his face done. It's just a matter of bringing some of the neck and the chest and body in, so we're not that far off from finishing. I've had some suggestions for future dog breeds, so we're going to be looking at drawing in the next couple of tutorials a Spaniel and a Dalmatian. If there's any other particular dog breeds out there that you'd like to learn how to draw or fur types, do let me know in the comments below. Okay, for now though, we will get started. So we're going to start at the along the top of his head and work our way down. I'm just going to remove this graphite, and then as usual we're going to go in with that base layer of warm grey 1. And I'm just going to do it all along the top of his head here. And I'm bringing it down to where we've got like a highlight. So across his forehead here there's a nice highlight, a nice shine to his fur. So I'm just kind of bringing that base layer down to that highlight. I'm going to have to keep lifting graphite. And then just bring this along the top of the head. Okay, so you can see now that we've got that nice base layer going across the top of his head. I'm then going to take my Nougat, which I did have out, and it has run off the disc. And then I'm just going to take the Nougat across the top of this head, so it's going to give that nice brown undertone that we want on this fur. And I'm just going to do this along the top of his head. Very light pressure, I'm not pressing hard at all. And just overlapping some of these grey tones that are already mapped in. Okay. Then taking Coal Grey 4, and I'm just going to run this over the top of all of this now. You can see how that Nougat just shines nicely through this grey, which is what we want. I'm just going to go over that. So if you see the difference, how this is obviously the warm grey base layer, but this area has the brown undertone, and you can see how you just get that nice shine of the brown fur. And I'm just going to bring this Coal Grey 4 all the way down this base layer now. Just going to take a little time following that fur direction, so the fur is changing direction on the top of his head. So we're making sure that we're constantly looking at that reference photo and seeing what direction this fur is going in as we're applying this, almost like another base layer, because we've not got any details in, we're just building up the tone. And you can see that we're looking very flat in colour at the moment. We're going to start adding all our contrasts soon. We just want to build up our highlights and our mid-tones, and then I'll come in and really amp up the contrast and the shadows. Just getting our tones and our colours in at the moment. Okay, so that's coal grey for over our base layer of the coal grey 5, of the warm grey 1. I'm then going to take the warm grey 4, and I'm going to bring this over this darker section now. So I'm going to start where I've got some of the shadows. I'm looking at starting to build up some of the tones in these shadows. I'm just going to bring this warm grey 4 along here as well. Now remember that this right hand side of the face we know is darker, so I'm going to bring the warm grey 4 along here, but we may go even darker than this. We may bring the warm grey 5 in to really darken this side of the head up. It's going to start coming down here. So I'm starting to work out where all these shadows are and going over some of the areas that we have previously added in. I'm just going to take the burnt umber and I'm very lightly on this side of the face going over that warm grey 4 with a burnt umber. Now this is why we say light pressure, because I like to come in and add these like glazes of colour. This is adding again more of those brown tones, but it's over the top of the greys instead of being underneath. Like previously we've done them underneath. We're just kind of glazing now over the top. So you really do need to use light pressure. So I'm now going to come in with my warm grey 5, so another darker grey, and I'm just going to start adding in some details, but also I'm starting to really amp up these shadows on this side of the face. You can see now just how much darker this is, and I'm making sure I'm blending over both ways so we get a nice blend. I want it to look nice and smooth and soft. So like I say before, when we go back and look at the Italian Greyhound breed standard for the UK, the hair, so the coat, the hair is meant to be short, fine and glossy. So they're the kind of words that we want to keep in mind when we're creating the fur of this guy. We want short fur, so we're doing really short pencil strokes. Fine, so we want to make sure that we're creating the effect that it's really fine fur. It's not very thick, it's very fine and soft. And glossy, we're going to get in when it comes to these highlights and these contrasts. We're going to start to get that shine on the fur. So they're the 3 words that I want you to keep in mind when you're drawing Italian Greyhounds. And then I'm just going to keep coming down with this warm grey 5. And along here. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm just gonna blend in, trying to just blend it a little more here, and along here. I'm just going to take the warm grey 4 again and just go over this section once again. And then over here again, just to help with that blend. Okay, then I'm going to take my copper, because we all know I love using these metallics. And I'm just going to very gently, just along here where we're going to start going into some lighter tones with the copper. You can see now how we're just slowly building up these colours of grey, and we've only used greys and a few brown tones, but we're starting to really get a nice contrast in this fur. So I am taking this copper and I'm just going to run it along the base of this warm grey 4 that we've got along here, and again on this side. Okay, I'm just going to move this across, and again I'm just going to use this copper. We're going to blend these two sections nicely together. So I'm just sticking to the Polychromos pencils in all of these tutorials. In some tutorials I may expand to some of the luminance, but I want to try and make it as easy for you all as possible. So if you've only got the Polychromos, then you'll be able to follow along. Okay, and then we're going back to the warm grey 4. I might just sharpen this. Okay, oops, sharpen this now. So I'm just coming back in with this warm grey 4 along the side of his head. Just going to darken this side up a little bit. It's a little too light, which is fine. Don't worry if you're ever too light. It's easier to go darker in coloured pencils than it is to try and lighten another area up. And then I'm bringing that warm grey 4 along here again. Okay. So you can see now how we're just really starting to get some nice definition along his head. I think we just need to darken along here. I'm going to take the cold grey 4. Again, just run that along the top of his head. I want a bit more of a bluish tone along the top of his head where we've got a bit of a highlight. And then as it comes into the warm grey, just going to get a nice neutral colour. Okay. I'm then going to come back in with the warm grey 1, and I'm just going to bring this base layer across the head again. Just so that we can start getting this nice transition into the shiny part of the face. Okay, so I'm going to take my warm grey 3, which I probably should put in a pencil extender, and I'm just going to blend that from the warm grey 4 area and just start blending it nicely down over this warm grey 1. So it's going to be like our transition colour is this warm grey 3. Remember, we've used the warm grey 3 as a highlight previously, so we may end up using this as our highlight colour, which is why I'm just for the moment using it as like the transition. We'll see if we need it for the highlight. Okay, and then I'm just going to take that warm grey 2 and I'm just going to go over the top and just smooth this out. I do like using the warm grey 2 to help with the blending and smoothing a little bit. Okay. I just want to darken this side of the head. It's looking a little bit flat, so I think what I'm going to do first is I am going to take, I've got the warm grey 5. Just move this across here, and I just want to darken this shadow here that we got going on. So even though this side is in a bit lighter, so it's more where the light source is, we still want some shadows so that we've got that 3D effect going on in the face. So we're just going to darken some of this up. And I'm just using the warm grey 5, warm grey 5 for this. I think warm grey 6 would have been too dark. Warm grey 5 is just a nice darkness. Yeah, I'm just going to bring it along here and a little bit along here. So you can just see, just by adding that, we've started to get a bit more shape in this part of his face. And then I'm just going to take the warm grey 3 just along here. So, okay, yeah, I'm happier with this now. You see, that's not taken us too long, and we've started to really get the shape of that head in now. Right, I'm going to take the warm grey 2 across this highlight. I don't want to go straight in with the warm grey 3 just in case it's too dark. So the best way is with this warm grey 2. Now what I'm thinking of doing is sort of coming down this face and then working our way on the sides of the face, and then we know just how dark this highlight is meant to go. Now I know that sounds really weird how dark the highlight is, but I don't want the highlight to be too light. So I think that's what we're going to do next. We'll start on this side of his face and come across. So as per usual, base layers. Now, when we come to doing the side of this face, we have a lot of contours going on and a lot of structure that we really need to focus on. So we're going to do it section by section. We're going to start with the bit under his eye, the cheekbone, part of his cheek, and then we'll come in here. So we'll take it slowly, section by section. So I'm just going to lift out that graphite line again. I probably would get away with not removing this one, but I'm just going to lift it. And then I'm going to get the base layer in around this eye. Right, so this base layer is just smoothed out the 2-foot paper for us to be able to work on top of nicely. So I'm going to get my Nougat again, and I'm going to bring this Nougat about just so I'm using this line in the eye, this little line that we've got going on, to sort of measure down, and that's about how far I want that brown. And I'm just lightly going to glaze this over that base layer. Making sure again, following that fur direction. This fur direction is really going to be significant on this face because it's going to be marking out the bone structure. So we really need to be careful with what we're doing here. Very light pressure. I don't want this to be too dark, but very light pressure. Okay, so you can just see we've got a bit of that brown now under his eye. Then I'm going to take my warm grey 4 and I'm going over this Nougat area. Short pencil strokes because it's very short fur. So remember, your pencil strokes reflect the length of the fur. If you wanted long fur, would you be using long pencil strokes? But because we have short fur, we're using short pencil strokes. That's how, at least that's how I find it works best for me. Okay. I'm then going to take the warm grey 3. And we want the warm grey free in this area here, so I'm just going to bring it down, and again I'm going to go over that warm grey 4 and Nougat area. It'll help us get that nice blend and a nice smooth transition between those areas. And then I'm going to take the warm grey 2 just in this little highlighted corner where the fur is a little bit lighter. And then my warm grey 4 just over here. I'll get some details in. I'm also going to take my warm grey 3 again. I want to get this nicely blended outwards. So I think the next tutorial will be the spaniel. I think I said this in the last recording. But we've done like a longer coat dog, a double coated dog with a border collie. Back to the warm grey 4. We've done a really short haired dog now, with it being this Italian greyhound. So I think curly ears and spaniel fur is should be the next tutorial. Okay, and I'm just gonna blend out here a bit more. Okay, yeah, we're getting happier. It's just a bit of working back and forth again. Warm grey 3 along here, because I can see now areas that I need to darken, like this eye. So a bit of back and forth, but that's completely fine. And the warm grey 4. I'd rather darken areas, even if we feel like we've done them previously, than it be too dark already and we can't do anything about it. Okay, so coming back down to the eye here. Going back over with the warm grey 4. I'm just going to use a bit of a harder pressure just to darken here. Back over this Nougat area. Really starting to get some character in this guy's face now. Okay, and now we're going to bring this warm grey 4 across here. So you can see that the fur changes directions. So we need to make sure that we're capturing that in our drawing. So I'm constantly looking back at my reference photo and just seeing what's the fur doing? What direction is it going? And then I'm going to take the warm grey 2 just over the top here. Help with that blend. Very lightly. I'm not pressing too hard. I don't want to burnish the paper. I want to be able to get more layers on top of this, on top of those layers. And then coming in with my copper. And I'm using this to sort of add some finer details, but going right over the top of all of this. Now, you may not be able to see the copper as strong as you would imagine. That's fine. It's just going to add that little hint of colour that we want. We don't need a huge copper colour showing through. It's just going to give a nice little glaze. And then I've got the warm grey 5, and I'm just going to blend this darker patch. Just add a little hint of a dark grey. You can just see that we're just adding a little bit more contrast now. Few finer lines that we can see. like that. Okay, I've then got the Coal Grey 2. And I want this Coal Grey 2 just under this eye here. I want a bit of a bluish tone here. And then I'm going to take the Warm Grey 4 again, just under this eye, and just curve it a little bit more, just to make this look more like an eyelid. Going into a highlight. Okay, yeah, I'm happier with that. And then we just need a bit of darker line here. I may come in with my slice tool as well and add some really fine hairs later on. Once we've got him all done, we'll have a look and see if we really need them. We may not. Right, I've got my gold, and I'm just going to take the gold across here. Again, some finer details is all I want there. Then the Warm Grey, Warm Grey 4, just ever so slightly along here. The Warm Grey 2, so you can see we're mainly using the warm greys today, getting those grey tones in. Now if you've only got one grey pencil, you'll want to just use the pressure. You'll want to either use it quite hard to get some darker colours, or a bit lighter to get your lighter colours. This is the Warm Grey 3, just over the top for a nicer blend here. And then I'm going to use the Warm Grey 2 here. We've got a bit of a highlight. So I'm going to use the Coal Grey 2, sorry, Coal Grey 2. And then the Warm Grey 4, just to show where we've got a little highlight there. Okay, yeah, I'm really liking this. It's really coming together nicely. Right, let's move on to the next bit. I'm just going to lift some graphite. So, again, I'm looking at the fur direction. I'm going to do some of the fur that's coming down this eye. So, keep it curving, and it kind of curves down here. So I'm using my base layer, just, obviously we're not going to see much fur direction with a base layer, but by me mapping in, sort of constantly looking back at my reference photo with this base layer, I'm just already starting to get a feel for what this fur's doing, what the structure of this face is. Which is why I'm not just rushing in and getting that base layer down as quick as we can. So I think this is just that little first section of fur curving round. So you can see it's not much of fur here, not a big base layer that we've got put in, but it's enough for us to be able to see what we're going to be working with. So I'm going to take my Nougat, and again I'm not going all the way up the face. I'm coming about halfway again on that base layer, and then very lightly, again making sure I'm really following that fur direction, really making sure that it's all going in the correct direction. Just blending over that little bit of fur that's already there. I'm then going to take the copper, and I'm going to use the copper as the base layer here instead of the Nougat. It's not as brown toned as the Nougat up here. Okay, and then I'm going to take the Warm Grey 4, and I'm going to go very, very light pressure at the moment. Don't want to darken it up too quickly, but light pressure with the Warm Grey 4 over that copper and that Nougat that we've added in. Also, don't forget to join the Facebook group. We've had lots of people sharing their progress photos of the border collie tutorial so far. And there's been some amazing results, so do share them. I would love to see what you produce, and let me know how you find the tutorials as well. I'm having fun creating these, but if they're not helpful, I need to know. Okay, then I have my warm grey 5, so I'm just going to start mapping in some of the darker shadows. So I can see that I've got a darker shadow here, and the fur's going this way. And again, I'm making sure I'm following that fur direction, because this is really going to build up the structure of the face. And then it's this darker section of furs coming down here. Just along here, I'm just darkening up any areas that I feel just need that little bit darker with the warm grey 6, and then I'm going to go back in with a warm grey 4 now and just darken again. It's a bit of a harder pressure now along here. Following that fur direction all the time. Okay, and then got my copper, and I'm just going over again where I want some finer lines with this copper, and then again with the nougat in this little corner. It's just a bit of back and forth. But we're really starting to get a nice structure to the face. And then the warm grey too. Just smooth and blend. Okay, I think as well I'm going to take my dark sepia, and where we've got some of this dark fur, I'm going to get a really sharp point on my dark sepia, and I'm just a very light pressure with a dark sepia. But I'm going to use this just to really define some of these shadows and fur. So very lightly, and I'm just, you see how it's just going to add a few darker lines and shadows, but we're doing it very lightly. You could do this if you had a black pencil. You don't have dark sepia, but you'd press really lightly. You don't want to overpower it. Just want a few darker fur strokes coming through. You see it's very, very light pressure. Very, very light. I'm just going to bring this up here. Okay. And then I'm just going to take my warm grey 4 just to blend along here again. Like so. So we've got a nice blend there, nice shadow definition, and we're starting to really get the structure of the face coming through. Right, onto the next section. So I'm again going to lift these graphite lines with a putty eraser, and then again making sure I'm just following that fur direction with this base layer. I'm not too worried this time about the fur direction with the base layer, but it does help you map it in and just kind of get your brain thinking about what's going on that fur. What do you need to do as you are drawing the face in? So you can see where that graphite line hasn't lifted properly, which is why we say erase the graphite lines. Now I'm not too worried because it's going to go dark, so that graphite line will be covered up. But if that was in a highlight, you could see just how much that graphite is showing through. Right, we've got a base layer. So this part is still in focus. As we come down to this cheek, this bit is kind of out of focus like the ears, so there won't be as much detail. Now on this part of the face, we have a lot of different brown undertones going on. So we're going to just take it slowly, and I, as usual, will talk you through. So we're going to start off with the Nougat. Again, I'm making sure I'm following this fur direction, because the fur on this face really does start to really change directions. Now, I've had people ask about paper choices. Don't worry if you don't have the same paper as me. Obviously, the Fabriano really does take all these layers, but with the papers that you're using, just adjust the techniques. As long as you're using light pressure, should be able to get quite a few layers. Obviously not as many as the Fabriano, and that's fine. You'll just have to adjust the techniques ever so slightly. Don't worry about it. You can use whatever paper you have at hand. Now I've got the burnt umber, so I'm taking the burnt umber along here now. I'm going to go over that Nougat ever so slightly and bring this burnt umber down here. I do like how these brown tones shine through quite nicely. Okay. I'm going to use the copper in this section. You can just see, you can see how much this fur is changing directions just with these little bits of light layers that I'm adding. Really trying to capture that fur direction. And then I am going to use the, what have I got to hand? The Walnut Brown. Very lightly. Along here. Okay, right, now back to the Warm Grey 4 over the top. It may make this tutorial a little longer. I'd like to get the face done, the sides of the face done and the highlight. And then we can do the nose and neck as part of the next part of the tutorial. And then, yeah, I'm going to bring this just down to about there with a Warm Grey 4. Okay, I'm going to take my Van Dyck Brown. I want to create like a brownish grey down in this corner. I think my Walnut Brown would be too dark, but we will see. We may go over with the Walnut Brown. So I'm just using the Van Dyck Brown here. And then I'm going to very lightly use the dark Sepia, which is again just going to give us that nice tone that we want. Just following that fur direction all the time. And then if I need to darken this up, I can, because we can come back. I'm going to take my Nougat again, following that fur direction. And and then back to the warm grey 4. And I'm going to use the warm grey 4 with a bit more pressure now, just to really darken up this grey area. Along here. You see now that we've really started to get that shape of the face in. Okay, and then along the bottom here where it's darker, I've got the warm grey 5. I'm really just going to go over all of this now. Really darkening up any of these darker strands of fur or clumps of fur that I can see. And again, I'm just going to darken that corner up here. Trying to keep the structure of this dog's face correct. So I'm trying to keep all these contours in place that we can see. Not the easiest breed to draw. It looks easy, but it's not. Lots of contours on this face. And then I'm going to take I think I'm going to use the warm grey 3. Yeah, I think this works well. Instead of the warm grey 2. Just to help this blending. Along here. Now we do have whiskers. I've ignored the whiskers because they're black. We'll be able to add them in over the top once we've got the drawing done. Okay, and then I'm going to use just in this corner. Well, there's no brown tones. I can just see the greys, so I'm going straight in with the warm grey 4. And then I'm going to go over that with the cold grey 4. Give us a nice neutral grey colour. It's a nice mid-tone colour there. So I know now that I need to darken that area up. So I'm going to take my dark sepia and I'm just gently darkening up along here now. Ever so slightly. I'm going to take the cold grey 2 just along here. I just want a bit of blue tone there. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that little side of this face. Right, we just need to do the cheek and a highlight coming down that face, and then this side of his face will be done. So I'm coming in again with my base layer. I'm just gonna move that graphite line. Again, it's gonna be dark here, so I'm not too worried. And I'm just gonna add this base layer in. Now, part of this base layer is gonna be the highlight. So as we're drawing in the rest of this cheek, we need to be aware of that. Just gonna add this base layer in quite roughly. I'm not focused too much on the fur direction because this section is slightly out of focus, like the ears, ever so slightly. It's not completely blurred, but obviously we are slightly out of focus. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Oh gosh, I'm making some funny noises. Okay, base layer in. Now, this part of his cheek is in shadow, so we really need to make sure that we keep an eye on that. So I'm going to start off by adding the brown tones that I can see. And I think we're going to start off with the Van Dyck Brown. Again, I am making sure that this part of the fur goes in the correct direction. Even though it's out of focus, you're still going to see some kind of direction. And as we're building up this layer, you want a thin line, which is going to be the base layer, not covered in any of this brown pigment. So can you see how I've got like a nice white shine here? That's going to be the highlight. And I'm just going to bring that up to here. And then I'm going to take the burnt umber. And I'm just going to go over that with the burnt umber now. And do I want to, yeah, I'm going to take this across this cheek as well here. And I'm not doing straight lines, I'm sort of curving them because we're curving around the cheek. So just keep in mind like the structure of the dog. What part of the dog are you working on? The cheek. Okay, so the cheek's kind of rounded, so you want round strokes. And it's all just, as the more layers you add, the more like these strokes are just going to build up and add that 3D effect that we want. Very soft. Okay. In this corner, I'm going to take the Coal Grey 2. It's quite a bluish tone here, and I'm just pressing quite hard here and into that little highlight that's going to be there. So I know that that's a nice bluish highlight on his cheek. And then coming in with the Warm Grey 4. So Warm Grey 4 is kind of a nice mid-tone colour. It's working really well. And just curving along here now. And again, I'm leaving a space for that highlight. Can make this highlight smaller if we need to, but you can see we've got a nice little highlight running across his face. And then I'm just going to use this Warm Grey 4 all along his cheek. Again, any areas that we need to darken, we will, but I like having this Warm Grey 4 sort of all over, because it acts as a nice mid-tone, and then we can darken where we need to darken. Again, really short pencil strokes. I think what my plan is, I want to try and get one full tutorial up each month. And then if I have time in between, maybe a few focus tutorials, because I'd like to do a tutorial on how to draw dog's paws. I think I've mentioned this before, so I'm going to see what we get on this month. Sort of use this month as a practice month. Okay. Now we've got quite a dark shadow in here, so I'm going to try with Coal Grey 6 first. We may be better off using Warm Grey 6, but this is Coal Grey 6 for now. I'm not pressing too hard, but I just want to see if this will look okay for the shadows. Now, the reason that I've decided to go for Coal Grey 6 here instead of Warm Grey, so we're going to get a neutral grey, but I want this highlight. I think I'm going to keep this highlight this bluish tone. So it means that blending into that blue tone is going to be quite nice with this Coal Grey 6. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm going to stick with the Coal Grey 6. I'm just going to press a little harder then. So I'm trying not to get too much detail going on in here, because remember, this bit is kind of out of focus. We don't want too much detail, just enough to show that this is the way the fur is going. Just going to take that Coal Grey 2 and I'm just going to run it down this highlight so we can get some blending going on now. Okay, you see, that's a nice highlight colour actually. So I'm just going to take the Coal Grey 6, gently blend into that Coal Grey 2, but not, I don't want to eradicate that highlight, just want to get a nice blend there. And then as we come up here, it's getting a little bit lighter. I think we'll use the warm grey 5, just so that it's not too blue in tone all along this cheek. So if I get the warm grey 5, just along this cheek. Again, still following that fur direction, but I'm not focusing too much on having fur lines to show the direction of the fur as such, because it is slightly out of focus. So doing this portrait is actually going to give you a nice soft look to the portrait. Okay, and then back to the warm grey 4 over the top of all of this. Very gently. Okay, and then I'm just going to use that warm grey 2 just to help with the blending a little bit. Okay, and then the cold grey 2 again over this highlight, harder pressure, and I'm just blending into those edges of that cheek. Taking the warm grey 5 here, I'm just going to add some stray hairs going into that highlight. Like so. Okay, I'm happy with that little cheek going on there. So let's do the move along and just keep going. We're just going to do a bit more. I may try and do another half an hour on him. I'd like to get a bit more of his face done in this part. Okay, so I'm just trying to work out where I think is best to go next. Maybe let's get this cheek in, because some of this is again blurry and I want to make some of it in focus later, so we'll do that next time. So let's do this section of his face, which again is a lot darker on this side. So we'll start off with this little section by the eye. I feel like as well I want to add some extra details in here. We'll have a look. We'll have a look at that later though. I'm okay with how it's looking at the moment. So I'm going to take my burnt umber, and I'm just, again, I want this nice brownish tone coming through. Okay, I think I'm going to take the Walnut Brown as well, just because it is darker on this side. So I'm just along this edge. Here, and then I'm going to take the copper. Underneath, okay. Now again on this side I'm going to use the cold grey 6 for the darker shadows on this side. I just like the effect that gave. So along here with cold grey 6. And again, this is a darker shadow under here. So actually, I'm going to take my dark sepia for that line. We've got like a nice dark shadowed line of fur here. So I'm just dark sepia along here. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to take warm grey 5 first, just along here. Like I said, this side is a lot darker than the opposite side, so we're going straight in with the darker tones. Okay, and then I'm grey 6 just along here. We've got some shadows. And here we're going to have that shadow meeting. And then take the warm grey 5 again. Just darken this up. And then we're going to take the warm grey 4. And the warm grey 4 is just going to blend this darker bit here with that highlight bit there. And then I'll just go over the top of that. You see how much darker this side of the face is now. Just going to sharpen my colour grey 6. And then I'm just going to use this very lightly. And I'm just going to add some little fur details now. Just to show that this is fur. Okay, you just see those little details appearing. Along here. Okay, right, back to another base layer. So we have a really dark section here, so we're going to get this bit in. So we get the base layer. Again, I've not bothered about my graphite lines there because I know this section is going to be really dark. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my burnt umber. Again, making sure it follows the fur direction. Still want each section to look like it's part of the dog. Following the shapes that we can see. Okay, so that's the burnt umber, and then I'm going to do the same with the walnut brown, just along this bottom edge here. So I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I'll update the description boxes. I've drawn this out about A4 in size. All my tutorial pieces I think are going to be A4 in size. It's a nice size. It's a size most people can get a hold of. So yeah, we'll stick to A5. I'm then going to take the warm grey 5. Just to blend over all of these. Now we're going to get even darker than the warm grey 5. I just want a grey tone to be based on top of all this. So yeah, the warm grey 5 works nicely here. I'm not gone too dark yet. And we do have a highlight on this edge, ever so slight highlight. So I'm just leaving some of that base layer showing for now, just so I know where that highlight is. And it's a bit darker on that edge here. Okay, then take the dark sepia. And really going to start now darkening here. So you can see we've got a highlight here that we won't want, but we can add the colours back in afterwards. Okay, and then this is coming along here now. I'm just going to very lightly take this dark sepia all the way over this warm grey 5. Darkening there if I need to a bit more. You see, we're just really starting to darken this cheek. A nice colour and definition coming on now. And then I'm going to take the warm grey 3 where I've got left this highlight. May need to go darker than warm grey 3, we will see. Just over the top here. Okay, and I'm going to take the cold grey 6 again. Just add some more details. Okay, so you can see just how much deeper this cheek is, and also how you can really see this definition compared to this side of the face. Which is why it's really important that we really focus on our contrasts and our fur direction. Then it's back to the base layer of warm grey 1. We'll get this side of the face to a similar position as the other. This darker side doesn't actually seem to take as long. I think with the lighter side, I'm doing it a bit more tentatively. I'm making sure that we're not going too dark, so it just takes a bit more time to build up. Then I've got the burnt umber. Again, just following that fur direction, and I'm just going to bring this burnt umber up along this little highlight that we've got that we won't need. And then in here. And again, sort of curving around. So I'm just, again, constantly looking back and forth at my reference photo and just following the curves on this face. Side towns are very curvy, so we really want to capture all these curves. And we're going to do this with the just with our shading, and then the walnut brown. You can see as well how these different shades of brown really give us the different texture, different grey tones underneath the the different brown tones under the grey fur. Words are very difficult for me today. Right, I'm now coming in with the warm grey 5, and again I'm just following all the shapes of this face. It is very cold today, and as I look out my windows, we're drawing this, it's just started snowing. The weather is crazy at the moment. I'm not surprised it's snowing. It is so cold. I'm wrapped under my blankets at the moment, and I'm very much contemplating getting a hot water bottle. Again, following the shapes, the curves. All about following these curves now. Really want to make sure that this is curving in the right direction. I'm going to take the cold grey 4. I've got a bluish highlight here. I'm just going to bring this along here. And then the cold grey 6 in this corner. Along here. Just darken here as well. So it's just a bit of back and forth, darkening up areas. Back to the warm grey 5. Just to darken here. And I'm just going to darken along that highlight as well. Which isn't really a highlight. Okay, the Coal Grey 2. And then I know I need to darken this cheek up again. So I've got the dark sepia. And I'm just going to darken in here. And I'm just adding some sort of fur strokes to show that this is underneath. So this cheekbone is underneath this section of the fur. Back to the Warm Grey 5 down here. And again, just fur definition. Okay, and then the dark sepia again, and I'm going to use a dark sepia to add a bit more definition and fur. I'm not pressing too hard, just hard enough that we can sort of see these fur lines and darker clumps that I'm seeing. I'm just curving around here. Again, if you don't have dark sepia, use your black. Just don't press too hard. We don't want it to be a black grey Italian greyhound. It's a grey Italian greyhound. Again, I'm just adding some fur lines just along here. Bring that. I'm just going back to the Coal Grey 6. And bring that up in here. And along here. Okay, yeah, I'm a lot happier with that. Just get the Warm Grey 4. Just need to blend. So you can just see how just adding that little extra, just pushing that drawing that little bit more, has really added that little bit of definition. Right, we will do this part of the cheek, and then I think we'll leave him at that stage, and then in the next part we'll do the rest of the fur on his face and his nose. I think that'll work out quite nicely. So base layer again. Again, I'm not worried about these graphite lines because they are light, but it's going to be a dark section of fur. Okay, base layer is in. So at the bottom here, I'm going to use the Nougat. Again, just use any browns you have. Don't worry if you don't have the same pencils as me. And then I'm going to take my Van Dyck Brown, which has fallen underneath here. There we go. And the Van Dyck Brown for the rest of this brownish grey tone that I want to build up. Now you could do this dog without any of these brown undertones. You could do him with all the greys. He'd look quite nice with just greys. I just like the effect of having this brown shining through. I'm then going to take the burnt umber. I just want a little bit of burnt umber under this fur as well, just to tie in with all the other burnt umber tones that we've got running through his coat. Okay. And then I'm going to take my Warm Grey 5. Now again, this area is slightly out of focus, so I'm not worried too much about fur detail in this section. We still want to follow the direction that the fur is going in, but we're not worried about getting fine hair detail. So when I'm not worried about fur detail, rather than sort of doing it like I've been doing up here where it's been like little fur strands, I'm not really picking the pencil off the paper. I'm just still doing short strokes, but we're just building it up ever so slightly. Like so. And then I'll just have a few little fur edges there. And then I'm going to take my Cold Grey 6 in this little dark corner. Actually, I think I'm going to take the Cold Grey 6 over this whole section. I quite like that colour. Yeah, that's a nice dark grey. Again, I'm not too worried about colour matching. I want the contrast to be correct and I want fur direction to be correct, but I'm creating a piece for me. So we're not creating a complete photocopy. We still want it to look realistic, but we're just making this piece our own. So then I'm going to take the dark sepia and use this as that dark shadow underneath. Press a bit harder when I need it a bit darker. Just going to bring it down here a bit more. And I'm going to run the Cold Grey 4 over the top, and that's just going to help me with the blending a bit, but give a bit of a neutral and a bluish tone. Okay, take the Cold Grey 2 along that edge there. And then get the Warm Grey 5. So I'm just kind of tidying up these little cheek areas now. I'm not really, at this point, I'm not really looking at the reference photo. I know the direction the fur's going in because we've got it all mapped out. I'm looking at the piece as a whole and I'm going, what do I want my piece to look like? So I'm just sort of darkening up these little bits here. The Cold Grey 2 along that edge here. Like so, and I'll run the Cold Grey 2 just along here. We'll come back and add some details around the eye, but yeah, I think we're going to leave him here. I'm really happy with how he's looking now. We've really got the structure of his face in, we're starting to get those contrasts in, and he's really starting to come to life now. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the tutorial. I know it's bit longer than we would like, but we've really started focusing on that face. The next part we will focus on this middle section, his nose and the rest of the fur, especially this highlight area. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Bye everybody.